Hey everyone, it's Julie. Welcome to the You-est You podcast. I am so excited. You're in for a special treat, friends, today. I just want you to know you're in for some really in-depth, awesome conversation. I want to introduce you to Dr. Jen Gunsaullus. So Dr. Jen is a sociologist and intimacy coach. She's a national speaker on couples intimacy, sexual consent, healthy relationships, erotic play, and mindful sex. All great things. She is presented to TED Talks, to TEDx Talks, and is the co-host of the podcast Sex Talk with Clint and the Doc. And her first book, From Madness to Mindfulness, Reinventing Sex for Women, will be published soon in August of this year. Dr. Jen has over 1.5 million hits on Her in the Den with Dr. Jen YouTube video series, and is an expert in the documentary on masturbation called Sticky, a self-love story. Woo! It's hot in here. Wow. Get on here, everyone. Get your towels, wipe yourself off, because this is a good conversation. Thank you, Dr. Jen, for being here. This is fun.
Oh, my pleasure. Hopefully everybody's pleasure.
This is so great. I'm laughing because as we're doing this podcast today, it's where I am, it's spring break and I have kids around and I'm like, well, this is quite the topic, but that's good. This is pleasure is pleasure. It's important. And this is one of the reasons I am like ready to dive in with you because, I think there's a lot of thoughts and beliefs around pleasure that I'm hoping we can just totally transform today.
I'm in.
Awesome. Well, can we just talk a little bit? Can you share with my listeners a little bit about you, your background? I always talk about the idea of your You-est You, your best self. Maybe just like who that is, and how did you get into this topic?
Yeah, so I grew up in Pennsylvania, small town outside of Philadelphia, in eastern Pennsylvania, and I grew up. And I was raised Catholic. I grew up, a quote unquote good girl. You follow the rules. You don't rock the boat too much. But I was loud and opinionated. Nice. And I played sports and I, was good at academics. And I was aware, particularly when I hit college and grad school, that the kind of good girl thing, like, it didn't match who I was. And so there was like a lot of fears I was carrying about being, expressed sexually, or like putting myself out there or traveling alone, like lots of just fears of that, I could make a mistake or something bad would happen to me physically. And it was really holding me back in life. So I actually I was in grad school in Albany, New York in 99. And at the beginning of the year, a group of friends and we came up with like a millennium list. Because I was like, the year 2000, like, we didn't know if the world was going to go to shit and all the computers were going to break down, which seems like forever ago.
I know.
Ridiculous now, thinking back. But I made a list of like, okay, what are all these things that are kind of holding me back in life, like fears that are getting in the way. And I had a driving phobia and all those things. And I was like, this is not who I am. And so I've just, in a lot of times in life, I've made a conscious decision. It's actually how I got into the sex field. When I was an undergrad at Lehigh University in Pennsylvania, I had a fear of public speaking. And my roommate was doing sexual health education. She was part of the sexual health peer educators, where you go around and do condom demonstrations and you talk about safer sex. Gosh. And she was having fun in the group. And I was like, oh, well, like if you can get up and talk about sex, you could probably talk about anything. So like I joined the group because I wanted public speaking skills.
Wow.
And then became fascinated about sex and gender power dynamics, how people make decisions around sex and condom use or not condom use, or drink so much that they don't make decisions and then regret it the next day. And I just became really fascinated about that. And so that was already like 26 years ago, and how I, got started in this field. And it's it's a controversial field to be in. Because it's like people are interested in it, but are terrified of it.
Yeah.
So, because there's still so much taboo about it, so many misunderstandings, so much shame, so much stigma, embarrassment. So, and I am just thoroughly motivated by creating safe spaces for people to learn and or explore around sexuality without shame, without judgment. And so they could just be authentic in a version of their sexuality that feels right to them and that truly connects them with other human beings. Because frankly, that is the, you know, on our deathbed, what do we look back on? We don't say, I wish I had worked more. I should have made more money. We're like, why wasn't I more authentic? Why didn't I connect more with the people that mattered to me? You know, sex and intimacy and vulnerability and compassion and mindfulness and that level of connecting with other human beings, that is the most beautiful thing we could share with another human being. And it's terrifying.
So. Wow. I'm just laughing.
There.
No, and it's great. I mean, I'm laughing like, you know, just how things originate and that, you know, in 99, like, or even before wanting to be a public speaker. And it just happened to be that the topic, you know, I think just that you followed, you know, your intuition and passion and then look where you are. And, you know, it's interesting because you said it's a controversial topic and I'm thinking, I get it. And in my mind, I'm like, it doesn't have to be like, why is it? And, you know, my brain's going into, I'm even thinking like your upbringing, you were raised typically, I'm guessing if you were raised Catholic, like you probably you didn't talk about this a whole lot. I don't know. Maybe you did.
My mom tried once and my sister shot her down. She was a few years older. She's like, we already learned about that in school. And my mom was like, okay. And then I was like, oh, I don't know anything. I was like 11. I was like, I don't know anything, but this is uncomfortable. So that was it.
That was it. Okay. Wow. Right. And it's like, now you flip that on its head and talk a little bit. I think what you started to talk about with the piece around creating a safe space and shame, you know, I loved how you went into like, when you get to the end of your life, you don't look back thinking, you know, I wish I'd worked more. It's more about connection. And how have you created more of a safe space? Talk a little bit about, I guess, both how you do that. And then for those listening who are like, sometimes even in a committed relationship, there can still be shame or discomfort. I mean, I think a lot of times.
Absolutely.
Curious, like as much wisdom as you can share with us here. I'm just going to try to download you and your.
Well, and it's funny because you said even, you know, sometimes in like a long-term committed relationship, it's funny because sometimes we think, you know, sometimes we are more uncomfortable in the beginning because we don't know this person, they don't know our bodies, like all of that awkwardness, but like the amazing neurochemicals of desire overwhelm a lot of that. And so that has its own awkwardness, but in long-term relationships, you really care what that person thinks about you. Yeah. You don't want them to judge you. Like you're really invested here. Yeah. And we also can make up a lot of stories about how we assume our partner's going to react to things, you know, without giving them a chance. So, I mean, for me, the first place when you ask that question where I go is like creating safe spaces, like what I do in my personal relationships as well as with my clients that I work with and in you know, big lectures is like, I practice what I preach. I try not to, I mean, we all have facades, but I am always trying through mindfulness and meditation and self-compassion work to be dismantling my own facades and just being vulnerable and owning my shit is, wait, can I swear on here? I didn't ask.
Yeah. We'll put a little E. E. Yeah.
that would be on here anyway. So like owning my shit. I think that takes so much vulnerability to be like, oh yeah, this is my thing. I'm like so mad at you because, you know, you, I don't know, posted that picture of a woman in a bikini on your Facebook page and made some comment. Somebody just had this conversation with me recently. And because I have body image issues, I am pissed at you because you posted that on your page and it seems so insensitive. And like, there's just so much to unpack in there of gender roles and self-judgment and insecurity and body shame. But like, it all comes down to this place of like, hey, so this is my interpretation of that. This is the emotions I'm going through. Literally, I'm feeling it in my stomach and it makes me feel nauseous. And like, but like, I get this is my thing, but we're in relationship here and we care about each other. And I know we don't want to hurt each other. So let's talk about this.
Yeah.
I know your intent wasn't to hurt me. But so let's talk this through and see what we can do together as a team. So doing that in relationships, but creating that same space, in my teaching, and with clients of like, I'm not judging you for anything. Like, we're all doing the best that we can.
Yeah.
With very little education around this, or at least decent education.
Yeah.
And certainly very little emotional intelligence training.
Yeah.
Around how to really be intimate with another human being, how to get your needs met in a responsible way, how to honor someone else, how to communicate through awkwardness and difficult things. Like, we don't have any training on this stuff. So, and like, I honor that. Like, anybody that comes to one of my workshops or comes to see me as a client, I'm like, I have so much respect for you. This shit's hard.
Yeah. So my thought or instinct is, and I'm curious what you think, this is based on a lot of my own experience, that that the most important place to start with intimacy and connection is with ourselves. Like, for me, I tried to find that. I was married to a really good person. I was in relationships with other people, good people, looking for them to fill things. And I realized, like, wait a minute, I got to know me, my body, it's not fair to put that on them, especially if I'm not communicating it. I'm wondering, I even think about like the documentary that, like, really intimately getting to know yourself. I mean, I've talked about it, like dating yourself. And I don't know if you do, that connection, I don't know. That's something that I've seen. I'm curious your thoughts on that. Yeah.
And I think as women, I think this is changing with younger generations. But certainly with some older generations, and my generation, like, we're still more taught that, like, our sexuality is based on someone bringing it out of us.
Yeah,
sure. And that it's almost someone else's. Our orgasm is someone else's responsibility. Our pleasure is someone else's responsibility.
Yeah.
And that puts a lot of unfair pressure on someone else.
Yeah.
If you're heterosexual, does not have the same type of body that you do. And, doesn't have the training. And then we carry our body shame, our embarrassment about asking for what we want, or touching ourselves in front of a partner. Like, there's so much weight and heaviness, of embarrassment and shame around sexual topics, particularly for women. And so, starting with yourself, I mean, honestly, the place I always start, I'm a sociologist, so I always start with looking back at, like, asking people to do journaling on, like, what were your earliest messages around what it meant to be a woman, what it meant to be sexual. Was there just silence, and what did that mean to you? Yeah. Were you caught masturbating once and got in trouble? What were your religious messages? What were your early experiences? When did you first see porn? All sorts of things like that. And, like, what was the impact on you? And no, all of those things have an impact on it. All of those early encounters really shape our brain around sex. We can absolutely reshape it.
Yeah.
But we have to know that we've actually been taught things, that maybe aren't good for us and do not feed our soul and do not help us be expressed and happy, in our sexuality. And so to know that you may have had some sort of kind of hidden negative messaging that you didn't even know about that you still carry.
Yeah.
So just shine a bright light on all of that. And you're not blaming anybody, blaming yourself, you're not blaming anybody else. It just is what it is. But now that you can see what you're dealing with, now you can make choices. To be like, oh yeah, that one doesn't feel so good. And, like, that was bullshit. That was my older sister's issue. Or, that was that first kiss I had and the feedback I got. And I still carry that with me. And we can let that stuff go. We can rewrite our sexual stories. And we don't often know that.
Oh,
so, side note, that's with my book coming out, my first book getting published in August. That's like that rewriting our sexual stories. Those are talks that I'm developing now to start giving, like, around my book, specifically, like, how do we, from madness to mindfulness, all this madness that we've been taught, all this stuff I'm talking about is what I'm calling sexual madness.
Yeah.
Women, we all think there's something wrong with us or we're broken in some way.
Yeah.
No, this is actually what society taught you.
Yeah.
And then through mindfulness skills and self-compassion skills, we can actually start to rewrite our sexual stories in a way that betters us and our relationships, and, you know, and changing what we're passing on to younger generations of women.
There's a lot of darn goodness. I feel like I have a basket I'm harvesting, and I'm like, wait a minute, I got like this thing, and I want to put it all in there. And I'm taking ferocious notes. And if you're listening, these will be in the show notes, because there's a lot what you said. Actually, what I heard is really one of the first things you said to start with, and I love this idea, is really going back and journaling. So to really look and kind of mine through your background, and just, as you said, you know, your earliest memories, your messages, being, if you're female or male, about sexuality, about religion, like what were the influences, if you got exposed to porn. I have a very close friend who is a outward recovering alcoholic who's also a recovering porn addict. And he talks about, you know, the demise of that and how that has affected, he's had to, I mean, it's been one of the hardest things he's had to do is to not be involved with that, and just redefining his whole sexual history. I didn't have that experience, but I can tell you, I mean, you made me laugh. Like, I thought about my first kiss at camp, and it was like terrible. I thought, I was like, that's it. I mean, thankfully I was lucky. Like, soon after, it was actually really great. But that, I remember thinking like, that's not great.
Everybody's talking about.
Yeah, I wasn't so into, well, and then I realized, like, I wasn't so into him. It's all right. It's okay. We don't all connect. It's all good. But no, but you know, I love this idea of the journaling. And then once you look at it, okay, how do you want to rewrite it? I love that. There's just the idea, there's hope that you can, that we're in control of that. We can change that. Absolutely.
And I mean, we have, baby neurons until the day we die in our brain that we can, through conscious intention and focus, that we can wire in ways of our choosing. Yeah. And depending on our age, depending on what we've gone through and our messaging and our experiences, it could take longer. For some of us, that's a lifetime journey, but you absolutely can rewire things to your benefit, and rewire your sex mapping in your brain.
Yeah. I want to talk for a moment. I know there are men that listen to this too, and I'm sure they won't mind the focus here for a minute on women, but I am acutely aware and concerned isn't the right word, but I'm curious about your thoughts around women and pleasure, and ways that we can either redefine that, or ways that women can find pleasure and embrace it. Because I feel like there's some that are getting it, maybe more in the millennial, and I feel like our age gap, we're getting there. But what's your thoughts about women and pleasure and how to create it? What is that?
Well, and it's funny to say that, because college students is one population I talk to specifically around sexual consent. And like, pleasure is a funny thing in the United States.
Yeah.
We are so hedonistic in so many ways. Yeah. But like, it's not often of our choosing. It's not like conscious. It's not mindful. It's not intentional.
Yeah.
It's like, I'm overwhelmed and stressed, and there's this really easy thing on my phone right here that I can just zone out to Instagram. And like, there is a certain sort of pleasure to that, but it's a disconnected. And like, I think we're kind of, I use mindfulness and compassion at the core of all my work. And that is about being in touch with everything that's going on in your body, your sensations, your emotions, your somatic experiencing of life in each moment. And I think, and I live in San Diego, where there's a lot of pot here, there's a lot of pot smoking. And that's fine. But there is so much numbing through pot.
Yeah.
And so many college students here, high school students and college students that are starting at such a young age. And that's just part of how they deal every day with stress of school. And then I think also part of their sexual experiences. And I know there's aspects of pot, depending on the strains and all, that can make you more sensual. And so so it can be an enhancement of sexual pleasure. But what I think we're getting is a numbing of emotions.
Yeah.
College students and the hookup culture, like, you don't want to catch feelings. And so you literally actually want to be numbed and not like the person you're having sex with or pretend you don't like them.
Yeah.
And like, that is so fucked up. Like, and I'm trying to teach consent where you have to care about the human being in front of you.
Yeah.
And hookup culture is about literally shutting down from caring about the person in front of you and then running into them on campus the next day and pretending you don't know them.
Oh my gosh.
And embarrassed. And I'm like, this is not liberated sex. And I think it's being put under the umbrella of like, hey, we're so liberated, we can have casual sex and we could do this. This is not good sex. This is not happy humans. These are not humans that are in touch with if they're giving consent or if they're receiving consent.
Right.
There's just, this isn't happy life.
Right.
And this isn't building skills like of how to sit with awkwardness and discomfort. Like, that's the skills of resilience that feed us in a lifetime of, like I said, having these very deep, meaningful, intimate connections with others.
Yeah.
And so I think there's so much through drugs and alcohol and through just a compartmentalizing and shutting off. I think there's so much disconnect from our hearts. And I get it, because it's so vulnerable. It's so raw. It's so scary. And you could be judged and you could be rejected. And like, if we block ourselves from that potential suffering, the joy and suffering are two sides of the same coin.
Yeah.
And we're blocking ourselves from the biggest potential for connection and joy and happiness in life. And we only have one life each, Yeah. So, yeah. Oh, I don't know. There's a lot there.
No, it makes me think of, I go back to Brene Brown quite a bit. I mean, she talks a lot about this with vulnerability. When you have vulnerability, I think that's what you're saying, you have the whole range of emotions. And as humans, we're meant to have that range. And I totally get it. I even remember when I was in college, it was like, don't get attached, don't be connected. And I remember thinking, that's weird. That doesn't feel human to me.
Right.
And I love, so I think we're coming naturally to this idea around, because I know you talk a lot about mindful sex. And to me, it's like, really this consciousness, this intention, like not numbing out, being in the moment. And I just would love to hear your thoughts about, so how do people in college age and beyond, those that are trying to run from emotions, that are, maybe without realizing it, using Instagram or social media or, whatever it is, whatever, to numb out. How do we get back to mindfulness? And what I'm hearing you say is an authentic connection, which just translates when, in a sexual experience, really it's just being present and authentic.
Yeah. And I mean, I think, and starting in the place of just, if you're like, I don't know if I want to feel connection because that's really vulnerable. Yeah. Well, at least start in the place of wanting to have better sex.
Yeah.
And that's, the first place that mindful sex can help us, of just checking in any moment. Like, am I feeling distracted in this moment because I'm worried about what my body looks like? And then I'm going to be judged for it. Am I feeling distracted because I have that test tomorrow at 8 a.m. and I really should not be having sex right now? Or am I distracted right now because I'm afraid my 8-year-old is going to knock on the door and ask with their homework? Am I worried about performance and that I'm not going to come fast enough, or that my partner isn't enjoying this? All of those things distract us. Those anxieties distract us in the moment. And so through the practice of mindfulness, which is just always choosing something to focus on in the moment, noticing when we're distracted, and then using our, executive functioning part of our prefrontal cortex of our brains just to choose to focus back in that moment. And so in a sexual encounter, I think the easiest thing to focus on is, you could focus on your breath, and just bringing yourself back to your breath in the moment, which is a mindfulness meditation practice, but also just focus on any of your 5 senses. Yeah. Focusing on your sense of touch is a really easy thing to do. You're touching the sheets, you're touching the body in front of you, you're feeling their warmth, their sweat, the curve of their body, their chest hair, like whatever it is. Or you could have a candle, or you could have music going, like as something. Our senses are a really great way to anchor us in the moment, and so present in a sexual encounter. And so anytime you're distracted, just, acknowledge the distraction. Don't judge yourself for it. Don't beat yourself up for it. Right. Just know, like, this is what my brain does. This is what all brains do. Right. And then every 5 seconds you're distracted, choose to bring yourself back to the moment. Because that's embodied pleasure. Where we're touch with what we're feeling. And then we're able to be in tune and attuned with our partner, with what they're feeling and with their energy levels and with their facial expressions and with their breath. And that's like that type of attuned sexual encounter. Like that's really hot because you get to feed off of the sexual energy of each other.
Right.
When you're really present in the moment like that. So, just at the level of good sex, mindfulness at that level. Plus you get to work through your insecurities.
Yeah.
And if it's particularly hard to catch yourself in the moment, to do some journaling outside of a sexual encounter. Like, okay, what distractions get in the way of sex and me connecting with someone else, and doing some journaling on them, and just sit with that discomfort and breathe through it. Know that you're okay. Come up with some mantras if you need to be. If it's a body image one, you'd be like, well, nothing I can do about my body right now. This is the one I got.
Right. This is it.
It's true. If you don't like it in this moment, there's not a damn thing you can do about it. And you're still in a sexual encounter with someone else. So you may as well enjoy it and help them enjoy it.
Right. Well, I think that actually, I'm thinking of some of the people that listen, and I know that we have a lot of women, quite a few moms or women that are, frankly, as you know, there is a lot of body shame and body image, and especially if you've had children and things shift. And I'm thinking I'm thinking of friends that I've talked to where, let's say it's 6 months, a year later after having a baby, or just for whatever reason, you're not feeling as in touch with your body. I think that can, that could get in the way. It's funny. I have found, just to add personally, like less care about how it looks, which is a gift. Like as I get older, I'm kind of like, who cares? Like, I'm just really happy to be alive and healthy and well. Like, let's just be present. But I will tell you that was not always that way. And what can you say? I love what you said about the mantra, but for some, now I'm thinking of women that are, let's say, in a relationship and their partner, it's like, well, my partner, is demanding it or wants it, or I feel like I should be giving it to him or her, or like, how would you work with somebody who's coming from that place of like, they're just not feeling sensual because they're not feeling as in tune with their body? Like, how do you develop that kind of attunement to your body? Because I think that might be a place to look at.
And there's a lot to look at there. There's a lot of really great exercises in self-compassion.
Yeah.
And meditations around that and mantras and things like that. But it's a crime what we do to moms and the expectations we have on moms in our society. Like from every freaking angle, it's horrible, and say you get a perfect body, then after a short amount of time, you're like, well, she must be exercising a lot and not taking care of her kids. It's like, there's a no-win situation for moms. It's horrible. And literally that's what our, bodies are designed to do as women, is to give birth, as all animals. I think one thing is, seeking out those brands and maybe those Instagram feeds and stuff like that really show women's bodies and show post-pregnancy bodies and all of that, and what bellies really look like, even when you're in great shape and you're healthy. Like, I think that is so important to just normalize this. And you are so far from being alone in this, but our society is so horrible on its emphasis on this quote unquote, young, perfect female body image. And so I think steeping yourselves in all bodies, colors, shapes, sizes, ages, and just normalizing that. Frankly, if you can get out to anything, like here in San Diego, we have something called Black's Beach, which is a nude beach. And talk about a place that normalizes bodies. That is amazing. And 5 years ago, I was sort of awkward going there. And now I'm like, oh, thank God when I get there. I get down, and it's like a steep hike down. So you got to work to get there.
That's so awesome. I get there
and I'm like, oh, thank God, let's just take these clothes off. And let's all just be normal bodies. And for the first half hour, it's weird. And then after that, you're like, yeah, we all have naked bodies. Get over it.
Yeah.
That's it. And but we have such body shame in the United States. It's insane. And I think moms carry that at such a heavy level. So I think, steeping yourself in other images, and there are sometimes, Turkish baths and spas and things like that you can go to, and be around all different body shapes and sizes. like I said, doing some self-compassion work. And then to get back, if it's been a long time since you've had any sexual encounter with your partner, just getting back to sensuality with no expectation of sexual and that's like really important, that even if you get turned on, your partner gets turned on, you don't do anything, and give yourself like 45 minutes that you were just having what I call happy naked fun time.
Ooh, talk about this, Dr. Jen. I'm like, this sounds really fun. All right, talk about happy naked fun time.
Happy naked fun time. It's just time that you schedule with it's particularly for folks that feel like they don't have time to be intimate, or it's been a long time since they've had anything, sexual, and it's like the elephant in the room. And then it's like, where do you start? And I don't know if my body's going to kick in. And what if I change my mind part way? Like, what do I do? You just need to normalize your bodies being sensual with each other, with no expectations and no pressure. So happy naked fun time. It's like schedule 45 minutes. Kids aren't around, times you're not going to be interrupted. Phones are out of the room. There's no technology. And it's okay if you feel awkward. And if you don't want to be naked, then just have a bra and underwear on, or have a tank top on and underwear, something mostly naked, and you just want to cuddle, and you want to touch each other, and you want to stroke each other and share things that you appreciate about each other. You could make it quality time instead of about talking about what matters to you, but you want to be touching each other. It could be some massage involved, but not, again, there's nothing sexual at the end. You set the timer for 45 minutes, ding, it goes off. If you did get turned on, wait a few hours and do something later, but don't make it this sacred time with no expectations and no pressure to just enjoy your bodies together and get that oxytocin release, and make it safe and comfortable that you guys can be physical bodies and present in your bodies together and not disconnected. So that's happy naked fun time. You can play games if you want. You can do whatever you want, but
awesome.
Yeah.
I love that. I'm thinking, even from what I remember in just the bit of psych background I have with, the human need for connection and touch, and it doesn't change. We need that our whole life. And just, I love this idea. Actually, I love it because just the idea of it is, first of all, play, joy, connection, physicality, but there's no end game. Like, what I'm hearing is it's just time to really be present. It reminds me of what you're talking about with, adding mindfulness. And so for those listening that are like, I'm just getting in there, I'm not comfortable, like, this is a great place to start. And I like what you said, like, maybe it's a tank top and your panties or whatever. It doesn't have to be totally buck naked yet. That can come later.
Yeah, we're pushing boundaries of comfort because we have to, because if intimacy and sex matters with your partner in the long term, then getting back to it matters. And so you're going to have to push yourself out of your comfort zone, but you don't have to go from 0 to 60. And frankly, it's probably not going to work, and it's not going to leave you happy. Yeah. So, do it in ways that are rebuilding this intimacy and trust with your partner and communication, but also with some nakedness.
I think that is so great. What is your thought, Jen? This might be, I don't know if this is something you have dealt with, but I would imagine when you have couples or situations where there's a breach of trust, it doesn't have to necessarily be, I'm not even talking just infidelity. It could be just like financial breach of trust, or, there's a whole range of that, but I've heard that before in talking to some of the listeners people I know. And how do you begin to build that connection and trust? Because vulnerability, my sense is it stems from a basic trust. And,
yes. Yeah, absolutely. And it takes a while to build trust. It takes a while to rebuild trust if it's been breached, and if there's a betrayal of some sort. And like you said, whether it's financial, or it's hiding things in other ways, or if it's cheating. Yeah. And so a couple of things with that. One thing is, the person that did it needs to own their shit, and to be like, this was a breach of trust. And they need to they may have their reasons for it, and there's a time and place to talk about that. But first and foremost, they need to validate their partner's feelings of feeling betrayed, and feeling a loss of trust and a breach of that. That absolutely needs heard and validated without any buts. you know, or no, but you don't understand my situation. Just that fundamental emotional validation of like, shit, I hurt you. Like I messed up and I am so sorry. And I care about this marriage or this relationship. And like, let's do something about this. You know, and then you could say, let me explain my context. Because frankly, if you know the context, then you help figure out how to make sure it doesn't happen again.
Yeah.
But the context does matter.
Right.
But validating emotions matters first and foremost.
Yeah.
And then transparency. So if it's like, you know, if it's something about, you know, because something I see a lot of now is like our exes never go away because of social media. And so it's really common, you know, it's 11 o'clock at night and your partner's in sleep and to bed already and you're on your computer and a message pops up from somebody you dated 5 years ago or something. And, you know, she's like, hey, how you doing? Whatever. Just want to see. And then you start talking, but you still have some connection. And then she's like, yeah, I saw that photo of you recently. You look really great. You look like you lost some weight. And now you're feeling validated. And now, you know, and like, it seems so harmless.
Yeah.
But if you're hiding it from your partner and you're moving towards somebody in an intimacy way, that means you're taking a step away from your partner. And so transparency matters around all of these things. And so, you know, or if it's financial stuff, you know, whatever, because I've worked with couples around financial breaches of trust. So this transparency, which I present as every day. You have a check-in. Could be only 5 minutes. But did you know, hear from anybody, you know, any of your exes? Or, you know, were you feeling tempted in any way? Or every day you share money that was spent, you know, or temptations that you had. And it has to be this safe space. If you're the person on the side, you know, that your trust was breached, like you need to create a safe space for your partner that they're going to be able to be vulnerable, that they're not going to feel like they're going to be judged and yelled at.
Right.
You know, for everything that happened. So that's your role. And also if you're choosing, you know, if you're choosing to stay in this relationship after a breach of trust, you have a responsibility to keep taking a step towards trusting your partner.
Yeah.
And making this safe. Like both of you have a role in this because you're choosing to stay in this relationship. It's not all on your partner. Like you need to facilitate these spaces also.
Yeah. That's great. No, this is such great wisdom, and I'm glad that we touched upon that. Sometimes I can hear people listening like they have this situation and this, and I think all of this comes under when we talk about intimacy, sensuality, sexual health, and well-being. It's like that covers a lot of ground, Okay, this is a general question, but is there anything else that I haven't asked you or just that's there for you that you want to share? Wisdom, part of what you teach, like. There is so much. This could be literally, I feel like a 10 episode. I mean, I'm just scratching the surface and I'm grateful for the time we have with you. Is there anything else you feel like, I need to share that, or I want to share this in any area?
Well, I'd love to just mention one thing. You know, one of my areas is sexual consent. Okay. And I would say we are absolutely in a crisis of consent in our country.
Yeah.
You know, I do it with some communities in San Diego. I do consent workshops, but I travel around the country and visit colleges. And my approach to consent is using, you know, mindfulness and compassion and sociological understanding of gender role socialization to be like, how did we get here and how do we communicate better with each other to actually make a difference? And really looking at the gray area of consent, of this kind of coercion of sort of pushing with poor communication and lack of assumptions. And so I have a video of a storytelling event I did a few years ago of a consent violation that I experienced. And so a personal story that I shared. And so it's on YouTube, and it's called Sex and the Price of Masculinity. And it's very, you know, it's very personal. It's very nitty gritty. The reason it's top of mind right now, I just got off a phone call with a local university here, San Diego State University, and they just showed it to a group of fraternity guys. These guys are like 21, something like that, and they weren't sure how it was going to go over. It was so well received, and the guys were like, oh, because it's not just like this black and white of like, well, we're not rapists. They're like, oh, those assumptions, that sexual pushing, all of that. They're like, oh, we've all done that. Like, this isn't okay. And so I was like, that is so validating to me. And I was like, dude, like 21-year-old fraternity guys, like this is speaking to them. So,
yeah. Wow.
I just, for anybody out there, whether you're single, whether in your relationship, if you've got teenagers, if you've got kids in college, this is a really great educational tool for them to check out on YouTube or on my website. It's on my website also. Plus, if anybody wants to, you could search on my website for it, but also folks can email me through my website if they want. I created a teaching tool specifically for parents.
Nice.
Who want to use this video with their teens. To watch the video and then how to set up this safe space to talk to your teens about this, and then pulling from various topics specifically from the video that I talk about, and then how to facilitate a conversation about that. So yeah, I just want folks to know that that video is out there and that tool's out there. And it seems like, I worked for several months on that piece and got a lot of feedback from folks. It's a very curated talk story. Yeah. And I worked very hard as a sociologist and coming from a compassionate viewpoint to make it accessible to men and women, for everybody to be like, oh yeah, that's been me. So that we can all like really try to create a new narrative about what we're doing around consent and sexual communication.
Awesome. And I'll make sure for everyone listening in the show notes, we'll have that information, but it sounds like we can find it on YouTube, on your website. And I'm so grateful you're doing this work, and it's fantastic to hear that it was shown at a university, and that college age men in fraternities, which is kind of I was in college. I went through that whole scene. I have a sense of what that is like, even though I'm not male. I was on the other side of it, and that's powerful what you're doing. I mean, I think we can see what's going on in the news and what's been happening in the last. Recently, this is important work, really important work.
Thank you.
Fantastic. I mean, there's so much goodness here. I'm like, where do I start with all of the show notes for you? But I love this idea. We come back to kind of what you said in the beginning. We all deserve and are worthy of having intimate, mindful, present, conscious, I call it delicious connection. That's my
it's a good word for it.
Like we all are worthy of that. And I love the tips that you gave and sort of how to start if you're not in a place like that, and how you can recreate your narrative. So I know your book is coming out soon, and that will be a great way. What are other
pre-order? Actually, it's on Amazon.
Oh, awesome. Okay.
Pre-order.
What are ways that people can find you, Dr. Jen? Where can they find you?
The easiest is my website, drjensden.com. It's DRJENNS. That's my hub for everything. So, my YouTube videos, my articles, interviews. Folks can sign up for my newsletter there. I send it out like once a month, maybe twice. And then like almost all my social media handles are Dr. Jen Den, DRJENNSDEN. So Instagram, Twitter, Facebook,
everything.
LinkedIn, YouTube, all of it. Yeah, nice. It's all there.
Nice. Well, and if you're listening and you're a parent, or you're just, this is an area of interest, or even an aunt, uncle, or you care about kids, or work with younger, or you're wanting to find ways to have more delicious pleasure yourself, or
I think we all have a responsibility to ourselves and a responsibility to younger generations to make it safer and happier.
Well, my kids are 11 and 12, but I'm going to tell you right now, I'm like bookmarking. I'm like, very soon we're going to have a conversation, and I'm going to be referring to this. So thank you for me and all those that are listening that are in that realm. And seriously, thank you for what you're doing and just shedding light in this whole area around consent, sexuality, mindfulness around sex, just the whole pleasure. Like I'm grateful for what you're doing, and thank you for sharing today.
Thank you for having me on. This was a lovely conversation. I appreciate it.